How's things? I know it. I'm thinking. And then proclamations. You've been off.
Good evening. This is the Puyallup City Council for May 7th. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Chief Clerk, could you please read the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Johnson,
Present.
Deputy Mayor King,
He excused absence.
thank you, sir. Councilmember Gilliam,
Present.
Councilmember Whitting,
Present.
Councilmember Dorr,
Present.
Councilmember Adler,
Present.
Mayor Castleman.
Present. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge any young individuals we might have in the audience. I'm looking out for any high school. You just might be exceptionally young looking, sir. I don't know if you're in high school or not. If there are, we like to acknowledge the young people at the beginning of every one of our meetings, just to encourage them, frankly, to become future leaders for this community. And that is where our future lies. I'm very blessed to have some very young individuals here who are leaders currently and will be future leaders of Puyallup. So we, again, want to encourage that. With that, I would like to have a move for a motion for approval of the agenda.
Move approval. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. In favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Number 2 on the agenda, consideration of minutes. I'd like to entertain the motion for approval of April 2nd, 2024.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. With that, we're now going to go into the next section where we have a number of proclamations this evening. And I see we have a lot of guests this evening. It's very wonderful to see you here. And we're going to start with a proclamation dealing with our police force. Whereas each May, during the week surrounding May 15th, our nation salutes the American men and women who put their lives on the line every day to maintain public safety and hold accountable those who break the law. And whereas there are more than 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the 70 dedicated officers of the Puyallup Police Department. And whereas over 60,000 assaults against law enforcement officers are reported each year, resulting in over 18,000 injuries. And whereas since the first recorded death in 1786, more than 21,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have been killed in the line of duty, including 3 members of the Puyallup Police Department. Marshal William Jeffrey in 1894, Officer Harry Storm in 1935, and the Chief of Police, Frank Chadwick, in 1935. And whereas it is with heavy hearts we mourn the heroes taken from us only because they chose to serve, and we rededicate ourselves to carrying forward their noble legacy. And whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Puyallup City Council officially recognizes May 12th to the 18th 2024 as National Police Week, and May 15th, 2024 as National Peace Officer Memorial Day in the city of Puyallup, and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and the communities across the nation. Eyewitness thereof, I, Mayor Jim Castema, have hereto set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Puyallup to be affixed the 7th day of May, 2024, accepting this, the Police Chief Scott Engel, if he could come forward, and could we please give our officers a hand? Go ahead, Scott, and with the microphone there. I want to continue because we have other officers here, because I want to continue this and you can speak to this additional addendum to this proclamation. We are very fortunate in that on May 3rd, there was a ceremony in Olympia where we had several officers in Puyallup achieve the highest honor in law enforcement. It's the Medal of Honor ceremony. And we, at that time, 6 officers from the city of Puyallup received that. And they are Detective Greg Reiber, Officer Patrick Thompson, Officer Brian Sutphin, Officer Andrew Bond, Officer David Pollitt, Sergeant David Bierbauer. And I would like to briefly just read why they received that particular award. Again, the highest award in Washington State. The listed officers responded to a domestic violence call as they attempted to communicate with the suspect to attempt him to exit the apartment. The suspect barricaded the door and refused to exit. A plan was set in place to force open the door. Detective Reiber used a breaching tool in an attempt to force the door open. After the first strike with the tool, the suspect fired a shotgun through the door. Detective Reiber was struck in the hand and body with birdshot. The suspect fired additional rounds as the officers were backing out to a safer position. Officers Sutphin and Officer Thompson were both struck with the birdshot. All of the officers on scene were at risk of being shot, and they provided cover for each other from the suspect. And with that, they were given the highest honor in Washington State. So with that, again, I'd like to congratulate all of you. And Scott, I will come down and deliver this to you. I want to appear too in front of all of you. Thank you very much.
Mayor Castema, members of the council, Scott Engel, Chief of Police. First, thank you very much for your recognition of National Police Week and Police Officers Memorial Day on May 15th. The men and women of the Puyallup Police Department are the best of the best, and they are what represents what you have done here in the resolution for our city. Police officers have an innate desire to make a difference, to serve their community, to provide safety, and leave things better than they found it. And that's exactly what our officers do day in and day out. They run to danger, they think about others before themselves, and they try to leave something better than usually when we found it. And I don't think there's anything more we could ask than that. We're very fortunate. I might be a little biased, but I think we have the best of the best here in Puyallup. And I'm very thankful for each and every one of them, very thankful for their service in our community. And we have great cops here in the city of Puyallup. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for recognizing our folks. And thank you to the men and women of the Puyallup Police Department for the job that you do day in and day out. Thank you very much.
I'd like the police officers to know that I think it's very widely known that you're supported by the community in Puyallup. In fact, when we do customer satisfaction surveys in Puyallup, our police force satisfaction with our police force is really off the charts. But that Support that you get is also matched by 7 council members who appreciate what you do and will make the hard decisions. In fact, you're given the proper equipment, management, et cetera, to do your jobs well. So we want to thank you, all 7 of us personally, for what you do for this city. Thank you. Okay, our next proclamation has to do with actually one of my favorite things in the world, bicycles. In fact, when I was a young boy, I had a dream of bicycling around the world, and I hope someday before I leave this planet, I have done more of that. But it's a proclamation again on the bicycle month. Whereas the bicycle is a healthy, convenient, financially and environmentally sound form of transportation and an excellent tool for enjoyment of Puyallup's scenic beauty, local attractions, and shopping centers. And whereas National Bike Month was established in May 1956, and today millions of Americans engage in bicycling as an affordable, environmentally friendly mode of transportation, an excellent form of exercise and family recreation. And whereas Puyallup Trails, Parks, and Recreation attracts hundreds of bicyclists each year, showcasing the beauty of Puyallup and citizens' desire to live in an active community. And whereas establishing a bicycle-friendly community has been shown to improve overall personal health, well-being, and quality of life, increased economic vitality and tourism interest, improved traffic safety conditions, and reduced pollution, congestion, and wear and tear on Puyallup streets and roads. And whereas the Puyallup Sunbird Chamber of Commerce, Washington Bikes, the League of American Bicyclists for Evergreen Trails, and other local and state partners recognize the importance that bicycles play in the day-to-day lives. And whereas the city of Puyallup is committed to greater public awareness of bicycle operations and safety education in an effort to reduce collisions, injuries, and fatalities, and to ensure safety for everyone on and off the road. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the city of Puyallup that we officially recognize May 2024 as Bike Month. In the city of Puyallup, I witness whereof I, Mayor Jim Castaman, hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Puyallup to be affixed the 7th day of May 2024. And the person who I'd like to have come forward with this is Paul Rome, excuse me. He is our, I think, our resident bicycle fan, and we actually meet with him quite often and hope to develop a bicycle plan in the city of Puyallup. So, Paul, I'm going to bring this to you.
Thank you, Mayor Castamo. My name is Paul Romich. I'm not representing any greater organization. I am a member of the community, and I choose to travel by bike as much as I can. And some people choose to ride bikes for fun or for fitness. Some people don't have a choice. Cars aren't exactly affordable or ability friendly. So it's important to, I find this proclamation important, the next step for the city as we look towards the future of creating a more equitable transportation network here in Puyallup, and just more fun as well. And yeah, and really I want to, there's not I guess people might say this might be hollow. We had an unfortunate incident of previous proclamation. I would disagree if anyone said that. Well, we don't have any, formal celebrations for Bike Month this year, maybe next year, but we have wins we can celebrate. So when we're looking at 15th Street crosswalk improvement, the bulb outs, slow down car traffic, anything that helps make a road safer, makes a city more bikeable. We have the connecting the missing link in the Riverwalk Trail coming up. That, you know, connecting that missing link is going to be huge for just bikeability east-west across the city. You know, extending the sidewalks all the way across East Main is going to be huge. I mean, biking on the sidewalk isn't ideal. In fact, many times more dangerous, but it offers an extra option that people might feel more comfortable riding on. So I think we have a ton of wins we can celebrate, and going forward, I hope we'll have even more two-way Meridian, hopefully. Yeah, just looking forward to celebrating this bike month and the future bike months to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I've always said that a bicycle, it's almost unfortunate that it has been around as long as it has, because if it was invented today, it would be the marvel of the world. I would tell somebody that a 20-pound item, that's all it would weigh, 20 pounds, a bicycle, could propel a 200-pound person at 20 miles an hour with absolute minimal energy. People would be amazed and they would want to see what it was. It's a bicycle. We should actually be amazed by what a bicycle can do. So thank you, Paul. Appreciate what you do. The next proclamation has to do with the Older Americans Month, honoring the seniors in our community. Whereas since 1963, May is annually recognized as Older Americans Month. And according to the Administration for Community Living, this year's theme is Powered by Connection, which recognizes the profound impact that meaningful relationships and social connections have on our health and well-being. And whereas the city of Puyallup includes a growing number of older Americans who contribute their time, wisdom, and experience to our community, and whereas communities benefit when people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds have the opportunity to participate in community and live independently. And whereas in 2016, the city of Puyallup became the first age-friendly city in Washington state, designated by the AARP and the World Health Organization. And whereas an age-friendly city supports and enables older Americans to age in Puyallup community and live with dignity, respect, security, good health, opportunities to participate in social and recreational activities. And whereas an age-friendly city can provide endless opportunities to enrich the lives of citizens young and old by emphasizing the value of inclusiveness. And whereas the city of Puyallup offers various programs, activities, and resources for our community's older Americans at our highly regarded activity center, as well as represented at the city's Senior Advisory Board and are effective on the Puyallup Area Aging in Community Committee. And whereas the city of Puyallup recommits itself to an age-friendly city and pledges to continue advocating for our community's older Americans and their independence for years to come, now therefore be it resolved that the Puyallup City Council officially recognize May 2024 as Older Americans Month. I witness thereof, I, Mayor Jim Castema, hereunto set my hand, caused in the seal of the city of Puyallup to affix the 7th day of May 2024. And I'd like to have Senior Advisory Board Member Chair Mike Boyster please come forward to receive this. And also other members, if they could go ahead and join Mike, that would be good. I believe Steve Shipman, Mary Butler, and others.
Thank you, Mayor Casima and the councilmen and women of the city of Puyallup. My name is Brenda Molesky. And I really appreciate this honor of receiving this. Lisa and Linda wasn't able to attend, so I'm glad that I'm able to step into their place. I've been with this program for over 15 years, and with the partnership of the city of Puyallup, we couldn't be successful without you. And we just want to say thank you so much for just working together with us so that we can advocate and educate the community in regards to the importance of us. We hate to say seniors, but for those of us who are aging in place gracefully, from there, and just helping people to realize that Puyallup is a special city and a special town that they can stay in permanently and not want to have to move. They can be a snowbird, but we love them to stay in Puyallup as much as possible. So we want to say thank you so much from the bottom of our heart, because it's been years. And also with these guys here as well. We partner also with the Activity Center with Doug and Trudy and Shelby and the rest of the crew. But we just want to say thank you so much for entrusting us. We had a successful year at Pierce College. The event went very well. We maxed out our numbers, which we're excited. We had over 100 people attending. So this was pretty nice. But once again, we couldn't do it without the city of Puyallup and the people within the community. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor Castema, Council, Mike Boyster. I'm gonna make my words short because she took all mine. But as I was looking at Older Americans Month, what stuck out to me the most was the power of connection. That is huge. I don't know if you have had any experience with older adults. I have had a lot because what I do, okay? And it is amazing the history, the stories in which they have. And I really, truly don't want to lose that. Our older Americans are the backbone of our community. They are. They have built the foundation we all stand upon today. If you think of everything that's taken place, and you look at the senior adults, I call them senior adults sometimes, sorry. Older Americans, I really kind of liken that phrase. But they are the backbone of our city. Look at everything I really enjoy because of the Senior Advisory Board, how the Senior Center has really stepped up to help our older community. They are doing a fantastic job. Their work has helped prove that our community can be and do big things when we truly come together. So the power by connection. Think, who are you connecting with an older adult? If you haven't, sometimes the easiest place is right down here in Pioneer Park. They're walking, say hi, reach out. Because a lot of times that's all they need is someone to reach out to them. And you will be amazed at some of the stories that they have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, with that, we're going to now move into the citizen comment section. And the chief clerk, could you please go ahead and read the guidelines for this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Okay, also, when your time is actually up on the 3 minutes, I'll go ahead and I'll ask you to wrap up. I may seem somewhat rude when I interrupt you, but it's important that I treat everybody the same who speaks, regardless of the comment they make, that we all stick to the same amount of time. With that, first person I'd like to have come forward is John Hopkins.
John Hopkins, District 1. A few things. You have an invitation as part of your paperwork that I handed in to our city clerk for an event Friday, May the 17th. Foothills Rails to Trails Coalition are inviting you to the trailhead for this event. And if you can't make it, go to the trailhead anyway. You see that it's about tripled in size. It's a huge connection, especially for bicyclists. An interesting little footnote for today, it would have been Dixie Gatchell's 100th birthday. And she was big on active transportation, AKA bicycles. You know, the trails are also transportation. She recognized that. So that's a big thing. And we also have Larry Levine for Evergreen Trails, who will speak more about this event. So I'll leave that to him. Moving on to age-friendly city and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that is happening is we've been working on the things that maybe we're not as good as we should be. The moment we got the award, we thought, well, what can we do better? And the big thing was housing. What can we do better for more creative kind of housing? And we worked for about 6 years on this, and we came up with, well, what we need is middle housing. What we need is more ADUs. And we finally reached that point, and then along comes, you know, our illustrious leaders in Olympia and says, oh, here's your House bill, here's another House bill. And so there will be middle housing, and there will be more ADUs. That'll mean more density, you know, around transportation, especially, you know, there'll be an allowance of 4 houses per single family lot within a quarter of a mile and 2 on single family lots. So that'll come at a price, you know, rather like Paul Green's, his project, you know, and what you call
30 seconds.
transit-orientated development. What you have there is about 100 units and about 100 parking spots. So if you do the math, how many cars would you have if there's 7 of you? How many parking spaces would you need? 7? Could you do it on 7? Probably not. More like 17 is my guess. In other words, what I'm trying to say here, as much as we support what is happening and want it, there'll be pressure.
Mr. Mayor, the
on
speaker's reached
parking
3 minutes.
all around. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll now move on to Edward Asuka, kind of fondly referred to as the pickleball man, if you don't mind me saying.
I apologize. I just got done playing a pickleball game, so I'm dressed in my sweats. Anyways, I just wanted to give the mayor, the city council members, just a quick update. This was the 7th or 8th ceremony I've gone to, this one here in Silverdale, where they called it the Peninsula Pickleball Cooperative, that include Bainbridge Island, Bremerton, Gig Harbor, Kingston, Port Angeles, Port Ludlow, Port Orchard, Port Townsend, Paulsbo, Seebeck, Squim, and Silverdale. And what they did is they took a Big 5 sports store. They added 6 courts with a kitchen, dining bar, indoor game area for other things other than pickleball, outdoor patio, lounge with screen wall, camera area, dining, fire pit, and then 4 outdoor courts. So it's a very, very family friendly environment. Now I've been to 7 or 8 of these, not only here in Washington, but all through Utah, Arizona, Las Vegas, to where a lot of these commercial properties are turning their commercial properties into a pickleball club. And they have all the costs and everything. And this is a cooperative effort with the mayors of these cities, the directors of the parks and recreation of each city, and the business community, all coming together because of this. I think it's right now 200 pickleball players per one pickleball court nationwide. There's over 50 million players right now, and it's growing. And you just mentioned about seniors. Well, just yesterday, we had an 89-year-old guy who used to play tennis, and he still has it, playing a 10-year-old girl, and they were playing pretty competitively. And it doesn't take that long to get them up and running and going. And our clinics now are spreading into I'm doing clinics at the Sumner Y. We're setting it for Melcorum Y. I'm running down to Silverdale to do another one, Bremerton. So there's more and more people jam-packed trying to play pickleball with 20 paddles waiting in any facility at any one time.
30 seconds.
So anyways, I just wanted to give you an update. I'll keep you updated with more information. If anyone wants any plans, I have plenty of plans to give you to show you what the costs are and what it's going to take to get something like that here in Puyallup. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Edward. Paul Romich.
Back. Thank you, Mayor Castema. Paul Romich, District 1. Kind of botched my ending on that proclamation speech, but it's okay. I want to thank Larry Levine for coming out tonight from Forever Green Trails, and then I also have some fun handouts for you. Well, one I just printed one copy of because my printer was acting up because it was like too much. But anyways, I commented. I put on the note here though. I know I'm known as the bike guy here in Puyallup, but it's not just bikes. It's smarter land use, right? What our pickleball presidente just showed us is smarter land use. It's taking space away from cars and moving it towards people, right? How can we leverage these big box stores that traditionally, once the business starts to feel pressure from whether it's community just not shopping there anymore, or if they're lapsing from due to external pressure like takeover, they pull out of the city, and it leaves a vacancy. It's really hard to fill for small businesses to fill a large big box store. So something like that's smart land use, right? Smart land use like density for our age-friendly cities, middle housing. I mean, as much as that's prescribed, smart application of it will increase a lot of our city's returns on things, increase walkability, more trees for our tree-friendly city programs, and higher safety, allowing more of our officers to actually attend to crimes rather than just handing out hall monitor tickets on our streets. So just a lot of that, it all comes back to land use. And so that's really what I hope you're taking away from this in my time here is transportation land use go hand in hand, and we ought to look at it smartly and progressively, because the grant money is limited, so if we want to be ahead of the curves that way, we can be a leader rather than a follower. And with that, I'm going to wrap up, but I do have fancy handouts. I have a fact sheet for everyone, and then a little PowerPoint, which I know Mayor Castema, you were asking me, what can we do to get more bikes in the city? I have
30
a lot
seconds.
of my ideas right in here. So I'll give these up to our favorite city clerk.
City clerk, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Doc Henson.
Good evening, Doc Hanson, District 2. If I'd have known the proclamations tonight, you'd have had old man ride a bicycle down here with a helmet instead of a hat. I just wanted to, I see something is not on the agenda, and I wonder where the council is in terms of looking at fireworks, and I just wanted to read something again to emphasize what I was talking about last time. And the big thing that I want to bring up is that assuming something is unenforceable is no basis for not making something illegal. Speeding can be considered not enforceable. Estimates are made that only a very small proportion, of those speeding are given a ticket for violation. We have speeding through our neighborhood and we can call authorities, but as Chief Engel explained, they cannot charge an individual unless they see the violation. When they are, they're fined. And when they're fined for the violation, word spreads to people, reminding them that they would receive a speeding ticket and costing them cash. Such a law does not eliminate speeding, it controls it. Does not eliminate speeding, it controls it. The same with fireworks. When fireworks are listed as a violation of city law, word spreads and lessens of violent fireworks. It does not eliminate the illegal fireworks use. It will control the wide use of fireworks, especially those who compete with legal public fireworks displays. When the public is notified that the future use of fireworks is now a violation of the city law, through a newsletter, public meetings, and neighborhood discussion, which can effectively be done, since we would have 1 year to present the information if passed before July 4th, people are not surprised when they are ticketed in 2025. As Manager Kirkley indicated, Federal Way has an excellent PowerPoint presented by Assistant Chief Kyle Sumter, and I would recommend that you see this presentation. When I spoke with Sumter while I was employed with the City of Federal Way, he indicated that illegal fireworks still occur, but it would be a much bigger problem without the current law
30
prohibiting
seconds.
all fireworks. As I've suggested in the past, de-escalating enforcement is an effective means reducing violations, which are measures often used to enforce new laws. If there is a strong enforcement citing violators for illegal use of fireworks the first year, and after the law is enacted, particularly around July 4th, and gradually reduced in subsequent years, people will understand the potential consequences of their actions.
Mr. Mayor, the speaker has reached 3 minutes.
I provided the regulations that I propose that are adopted by a number of cities. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tony Sosby with Hewitt Zellers.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm here in support of Agenda Item 5A. My name is Tony Sosby. I'm a professional engineer with Hewitt Zellers. Our office is over in Tacoma, 1102 Broadway. Had the pleasure of working with the city engineering staff, Hans Hunger and Ken Hook, for the city's sewer subcommittee since time in 2023. You've got some pretty hardworking guys there. You better keep hold of them. They're doing good work and they're looking for the city's best long-term interest. To make development work for private sector clients, they have several key factors that I want to describe that will either make or not make those projects work. One is it has to have financial feasibility and provide a return on investment. The second is entitlements have to exist or be reasonably obtainable for them to support the project. The third one is understanding what the schedule aspects are and so that they can undertake the project within a reasonable duration. Then the ability to determine that the risks that are left otherwise are manageable for them. Almost any project that we work with with a private sector client, it takes some degree of public sector component. For simple and small ones, it's connecting to utilities, it's doing street improvements right out front, something very simple and something very easy to manage. However, on larger projects, that have a more substantial investment, sometimes it takes a lot more getting into the public infrastructure and having infrastructure brought in so that these projects can be made to work. They may even consist of frontage improvements. Think of roadway widening, think of lanes, traffic improvements and such, or extensions of public utilities. We do a lot of that with water and sewer lines. The public sector improvements are quite expensive, and a lot of times they're looking for ways in which we can get those costs shared with the public sector. Sewer development credits is a way in which to be able to do that on those infrastructure improvements that can be used for others as well, so that others can tie on to them. That way, the sewer development credits that Hans and Ken will talk about in a bit, they're positive contributions. They help the city's infrastructure investment
30
be built
seconds.
quicker, and in a way in which to support the vitality of the city and to be able to help other development come in, increasing in density that is there, increase your tax base and the economic vitality of neighborhoods. We're in support of those tiered credits for affordable housing, which is in great need in the South Sound. We understand through latecomer agreements, you can get cost sharing back to the city. And
Mr. Mayor, the speaker has reached 3 minutes.
And so we support those agreements and the sewer development credits.
Thank
I'm
you.
here to answer any questions that may come up later as well.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Larry Levine.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Larry Levine. I'm the director of Forever Green Trails. We are a countywide trail advocacy nonprofit, and our mission is to help local governments like yours build out our planned regional trail system by providing technical and fundraising services. I wanted to thank you for your support of bicycling through the proclamation today. As you know, active mobility and recreation via trails and other facilities are important not only for personal health and providing mobility options, but it's really crucial for people who cannot drive either due to age or ability or economic reasons. And as you're hearing and maybe seeing around your community, folks want to stay active longer in life. And so these are great facilities to help folks do that. My organization has been assisting your Parks and Public Works staff with grants for active mobility projects, and we look forward to helping provide funding for development of trails, bike lanes, and sidewalks for the enjoyment of the community. I wanted to re-extend, I guess, that invitation for a Bike Month event by one of our major partners, the Foothills Rails to Trails Coalition, that John had mentioned, but I want to kind of reiterate that because it's really an invitation to the public as well. On Friday, May 17th, also known as Bike Everywhere Day, they will be hosting a celebration station from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the recently expanded East Puyallup trailhead of the Foothills Trail. And they'll be tabling there and providing information about the amazing work that they do. And there will also be a group bike ride to South Prairie and back that will be leaving 10 a.m. again, the East Puyallup trailhead of the Foothills Trail. And it's just fabulous to see the kinds of cooperative work and coordination that organizations like Foothills Trails, Rails Trails Coalition, Forever Green Trails are doing with local governments like yourselves, and we really appreciated the just the cooperative kind of nature and attitude that we've encountered with your staff. So just want to let you know that we're working to help make your city
30 seconds.
We appreciate your participation in that. So thank you once again for that proclamation.
Thank you. Larry, just for clarification, the event on Friday, the May 17th, is going to be at the East Puyallup Trailhead, which is at the base of Shaw Road, which is near the Van Laer Park, near Farm 12. I just want to clarify that for everybody.
Yes, sir.
That's what we're referring to. And then from there, you'll go through the Ording Valley and up to South Prairie.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. So with that, that ends all of the public comment on people who submitted this kind of goldenrod form here. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to comment? If you'd like to, please come forward at this time and just say your name and your particular address or district that you're in. If not, we're now going to move on to the next portion, which is the consent agenda, where we look at particular items and then we make a uniformed motion to accept them. So there's, I ask all members to view the consent items, and if there is any item on there that they would like removed for discussion, I'd like a member to ask for that to be done. Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, now we'll move on. Number 5, consideration and request. 5A is the item that one of the gentlemen who gave a public comment was referencing. And Hans Hunger, come forward. This deals with incentives for sanitary sewer extensions.
Yes, Hans Hunger, city engineer for Puyallup. So coming here tonight, this is your first chance to see this incentive program that we've worked on trying to develop. And so my interest here is gauging your interest, certainly answering any questions you might have, and any kind of guidance you want to give us if we move forward on this. So what we're presenting tonight, is just try to show you what an incentive program could look like. And then there's discussion about like the size of incentives if we wanted to vary that also. So what's driving the need for more sewer expansion? Well, there's a couple of combination things that are going in. We've got quite a bit of area that might surprise a lot of people that are within our city limits that don't have sewers on there, and even the larger areas that are within our urban growth area that are planned to be part of our city someday, but they don't have sewers. And you might think, well, what's the problem with that? Well, one, as we're trying to achieve certain comprehensive plan densities, having sewers is a very important component to getting the densities that you need. Right now, we have a policy that's been in place for ever since I've been at the city, is for new plats occurring within the city, they have to connect to sewers. So we don't want these land subdivisions to put in septic systems that are going to be there for the next 20 years. We want these things connected to sewers there. But the challenge will be if it's financially infeasible for them to bring sewers out from the existing locations there. So you really have two choices. You either try to figure out an incentive program to try to incentivize getting the sewers built out by the private development, or the city can pay to extend those. And right now, a lot of our focus on our city sewer is replacing the aging infrastructure that we have in areas around that are already sewered. Some of those, approaching 70 years on this. And then, so what we found, at least since I've been here, and we really haven't had a major sewer extension for residential development since I've been here. Probably Stewart Crossing would be your last large development that was pulling sewers from some distance there. And then, of course, we had with the warehouses in the northeast part, they were extending sewers quite a ways. But for residential building plats, we haven't seen that there. And especially in the West Hills area, there's just a lot of potential there for growth. I think we're expecting that growth to occur, but until we can get sewers out to that area, we're probably not going to see that growth. And so what we see is little small, either short plats or just infill developments on there. And somewhat it's concerning if you have a larger lot that could be subdivided to provide housing, instead turning into just one single family house there, and it'll be there for a while. So higher densities can definitely occur when there's sewers. So the current sewer system, you might not be familiar with, but we have a sewer comp plan. This is an element of that plan. It's a map. It basically breaks the sewers into a lot of colorful areas in the city that have our sewer subbasins. And within those, we have both the existing sewer system that's all mapped out, but we also have a planned sewer system of where it potentially can go. It's high level, but it's basically a roadmap for development to occur. And what I've done was I've included percentages on some of those outer rim colored areas to show, how much of this area is sewer. And you see a lot of 0% there. Now, some areas like Rodesco, probably not going to get sewers out there. That's an area that we have slated for low density development, and it doesn't need there. But when you look at other areas of the city where we are planning higher density development, you've got to get sewers out there to be able to achieve that. We've got an older sewer system, as most of you are aware. I talked at length during the utility rate studies about our sewer system, and then recently came to you with, talking about connecting in with Edgewood and stuff. So really what I see this as, this incentive program, it's a lot of thinking, I think, as Ken Cook had told me, it's like we're long range sewer planning. What are we going to need to make the system fit with the growth that we want in our city? And so we're trying to look out beyond the existing infrastructure. What do we need to go beyond that? So one of the things that we've been doing for quite some time, we have the Puyallup Permitting Partnership. That's a group that gets together regularly, quarterly. Staff from both engineering and DPS are involved with meeting with real estate developers, talking about ways to improve our permitting system. And what we found effective is when you find a topic, break down into a subcommittee. And so we did that with talking specifically about sewers. And we really looked at 3 specific topics we were dealing with. The highlighted one is the one I'm talking to you about tonight. It's incentive options for extending sewer systems there, and it's modeled after a county program, and that's the focus. But we also talking about low pressure systems. That's when you can't get it to gravity and you can't afford to build a big lift station like we will for the city. Can you put in grinder pumps on individual lots and do a low pressure force main through there? Not as desirable for long-term sewer. It's always better if you don't have to pump it there to let gravity work there. Cheaper for the city, cheaper for the residents and stuff. And then the last one is potential septic options, which the city could accept. And as I said before, right now, you plat, you have to connect to sewers or there's just no option there. So are there options for septic systems that the city could accept that would be acceptable long range? And the last 2 bullets we still need to work on before we come before you and present anything. But it's just things that this committee has been working on. And we've been at it now since 2003 discussing some of these. So the incentive program. So just the basics of it. This is where we're trying to incentivize a developer paying at their cost. They would extend a sewer to their new development. And I will have an example in the next couple of slides because it's always easy to see on a picture. But the city, in order to incentivize and lower down the expense, would credit some SDC charges towards the development. So whenever a developer builds, and if you build 100 lots in there, you have a system development charge for each one of those lots. Right now, it's about $6,500 per lot, and that's it's partly that was part of the rate study that was passed in 2022, and there's a calculation that's done for that system development charge. There is a buy-in to the existing system. Just everybody else has already paid for this system. You're connected into it. What does it cost for you to buy in? That's about 57% of that system development charge. But then there's a 43% that is credited towards future capacity we're going to need to improve the system. And that's the portion that I'm talking about here for crediting. But in order to really get this incentive up to what a full credit would be, we actually have a line item in our sewer system capital facilities plan called sewer system expansion funds. And so by the combination of 1 and 2, we would potentially get up to a full credit if that's what we wanted to do. The third bullet there that is a lot of words, SDC credits would be capped, is basically trying to get at, this is a scaled system. If you're building a sewer extension and your development is taking up most of the capacity, there's not too much chance for anybody else to buy in later and connect into this system, then you're not going to be eligible for this program because basically the sewer was all about your development going in. But if you're extending this sewer a mile and there is a vast amount of area that can tie into it and stuff, then what the credit is supposed to be doing is giving you a proportionate credit compared to all the other areas outside of your development that could connect in. So it can be scaled in that way. And I'll show you more on the example that I'll give. And then the last part of this is what we call latecomers agreement. And you guys have seen latecomers come before. It's something council has to approve. But basically, it's a way of recouping the cost of that sewer extension for future people that connect into it. Here's a line, I want to connect into it. Well, you have a proportionate cost of that line there. And since the city is becoming a participant in this sewer extension, we become a participant in the latecomers agreement. So when money is collected from future connections, the developer gets a portion of it, we get a proportion in proportion to the share that we paid or credited towards the sewer main extension. So there's some options on this. There's the option of, should we give a full SDC credit or something less? And that's a discussion to be had. I like keeping the system, the program as flexible as possible to incentivize as much as possible, but I'll discuss more about like, what are the options there? Why would we maybe credit less than that? I also think there's something that could be discussed. It's going to take some thought on it, but we have goals in our both housing action plan and in the comp plan that we could incentivize by saying, look, if you're going to get a full credit, we want to see some of these elements included in this development you're doing. Maybe that's affordable housing, maybe that's something else, but it's something that if that's something that would interest the council, we'd want to work with our planning department to say, what are those things that we're trying to achieve look like? You know, and so if you're maybe getting that additional density that we need for meeting our housing criteria, could we give a little better credit than what you would get if you're maybe just doing single family houses that aren't really going to be considered affordable there? The market driven, but they just might not be affordable. We could also, you know, one of the things we've thought about in the committee is to ease the program is maybe there's just a flat cutoff point where your sewer extension isn't benefiting enough other possible connections that beyond that, say if it's 50% is just for your development and 50%, maybe below that, we just say you're not eligible for the program. You really should be able to extend that sewer. You can do a latecomer afterwards if you want, and all the money would go back to you, but just to ease the program. Because what we don't want is somebody to come in where they're extending it and 90% of the use is for their development. And they're saying, oh, I'd like to use the program for that. I think they can fund that one by themselves. But I'm not a developer. I'm just the person listening to them. And then the last time, the latecomers fees could be increased by inflation annually. Now, this is a concept that the county just administered last year in their program, because as I said, this is modeled after a program the county has been doing now for about 6 years. And it's basically taking whatever that in that proportionate rate that you'd have to pay in if you connected into this system afterwards. It's not just locked in at that dollar amount. It increases by inflation each year. Same way we increase system development charges by inflation each year. It's basically recognizing that over time you're losing the power of that dollar. So therefore we will charge that increased inflation amount when you connect in later. It's what it would have cost you to build that sewer now if you had to build it for your last, if you were coming in late. So here's the example that I'll give here and stuff. So this is in the northwest section of our city. You can see, you know, Highway 167 there and where 512. And so we have right now an existing sewer system out on Valley Avenue. And then you see that red line there. So the red line is to represent a sewer main extension. And the pink area is the applicant. That's the person coming in saying, I want to extend the sewers because I need it for my development and stuff. And so for those people there, you look at their site and then we draw a map out like who else in this sub-basin would be able to use that red line there. And it's the blue area there. So from that, you can calculate, here's how many potential connections should go into that red line if it's all built out in the future there. There's a little bit of an art to figuring that out. It would be dictated in policy. How much do you say that the lots can subdivide down to based on the zoning and stuff? But you come out with a percentage on that that says, okay, if the applicant site is planning 98 connections, but there's a potential of 368 connections within this entire reimbursement area, then you use simple math to get yourself out to a percentage share that is the maximum that the development would be applied to. And then you use that against the price that it costs them for extending that sewer line out and stuff. And then you compare that, I know this is getting complicated, you compare that with the number of SDCs that would be required. If there's a lot of connections to be made, a lot of area outside of the development, then what likely will occur is the cost of that will exceed their portion of it and stuff. And so they could get a full credit if we decided full credit. They could get the entire credit on that. So in this case, they did receive the full credit. They could credit up to 693,000, almost 600 or 633,000 of the entire $1 million project. $1 million is what it costs to extend that sewer hypothetically and stuff. So that established what the latecomer ratio would be. If it's $1 million project and the city's crediting $633,000, when people connect into that later, we get 60%, 63% of the collection of that money for that connection. And then the later somebody comes, and then the developer gets the remaining part for the 36.7.
Excuse me, Hans. Councilmember Johnson, can you wait for your question or would you like to have a question right now? Okay, fine. Continue, Hans.
Okay. So let me just walk you through the numbers here of how this could work, because there was a green area on that map. And that's my, what if the green area comes in after the sewer main's connected and they want to buy in? So they're paying the latecomers fee and they're paying their own system development charges. And this is where I really want to give from my perspective, this is like an investment in our sewer system. We're investing this credited SDCs in order to potentially get more connections down the road. Connections we wouldn't receive unless somebody, the city or the developer, built that red line. So in this case, you know, we have a latecomer fee there. The latecomer's current, the current one, $8,695 per 65 cents per acre. That's what the latecomer's fee would be for this area as we figured it out. We also have a city administration fee, and I'm glad of this because these administration of the latecomers do take some effort and stuff. So we tack on 4% on that for our fee to administer this. So remember, the city's portion for this latecomer would come back at 63.3%, applicant's portion 36.7%, and the current, this year's SDC fee for sewers is $6,458 per equivalent residential unit. So if in the future, that green area, 2 acres is what the area is, it's 10 units that they're proposing, just hypothetical, and they're requesting to develop their connect. So they would have 10 times the current SDC fee of almost $8,700. So the city then would collect $11,000 and the applicant would collect almost $6,400 in that ratio there. We would also be collecting $65,000 of SDCs from this new 10 unit development. And then we'd have the administration fee, which would come to the city. So in the end, when that applicant came in, we would be collecting, the city collecting $76,000, the applicant would be collecting $6,300. So this is what I'm trying to convey is by making this investment as people connect in later, that they wouldn't connect in without this extension being done, we're able to start collecting money. I'm realistic. You're not going to collect necessarily all your money. Latecomers rarely do have all those people. A latecomer lasts for 20 years. There is an ability for the city to extend it another 20 years if they wanted to, if they felt like, you know what, this area is going to develop. It just hasn't happened yet and stuff. But this investment will come in as those connections are made. But I also want to emphasize on this is that getting the new customers in is important. And this is kind of a concept that, you know, the sewer system has to grow just like a city has to grow to remain vibrant. You got to have the new infrastructure coming in so that you can afford with all the the new ratepayers coming in to replace the older infrastructure there. Right now, when our capital facilities funds come in and I do the budgeting for that on what we're doing for capital, it's about 10% of the capital costs come from system development charges. 90% of those come from just utility ratepayers paying for it. If we can get more ratepayers, that improves the amount of capital that we can do, such as replacing the older infrastructure. So in that sense, since everybody in the current system is responsible for paying, you know, to replace the aging infrastructure, getting more ratepayers connected helps out everybody because it distributes the cost among more people. So just to sum up on the benefits of the city, and then I'm happy to answer questions here. The private sewer extensions, they're generally cheaper than the city doing. We have a few. We have one going on that's in design right now at Fruitland with 2 phases. That was all part of the utility rate study there, but they are expensive for us to do. That can be due to, you know, the differing conditions that what we're paying for as a city versus what a developer does, but it's cheaper for the private extensions out. Reducing the population on septic systems has water quality benefits and increased density. This also gives options. I mean, it is tough when you're coming up with a person that has a failing septic system, but there really isn't an option for them to connect to sewers. And now they've got to figure out how can they rehabilitate that septic system there. Sewer main extensions spur other development, just like we were talking about at that green area, which in turn would pay the SDCs and latecomer fees to connect and create more ratepayers. And then the credits would be paid back as with the new sewer connections. This also provides viability for owners of failing septic systems, as I just said there. And then the last thing I think is really, I think of this policy as it's trying to marry with what we're envisioning in the comp plan. We have areas of growth and we need to figure out how to get there. And we're just not seeing that right now. If the development could afford those extensions, I would think we would be seeing a lot more plating in those out. But what we see is if there isn't sewers close by, we get proposals. Would this city consider this? Would they? And then they go away. So that has led me to believe I may never know the bottom line of what exactly will be feasible for a developer, but I know at least right now the current condition isn't. And so with that, I'll turn it back to Mayor Castema, and answer questions. And I have Ken Cook here from the development engineering. Tony, could answer on the development side if you had the questions.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hans, could you go back to that benefits to the city? I'd like to just kind of tee up on that. I think we need to focus on that. So I do have a lot of questions. Could you tell me roughly, and I know it's a little bit on the fly, but if you were to take a look at all of our city, inside the city limits per se, what would you say roughly is the ratio of our residents, all the households here, that are hooked up to septic versus hooked up to a sewer system? Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? What's the ratio approximately of septic users versus sewer users?
Well, if I just looked at population, I'm going to say it's a much higher percentage, because by the time you get out to the outer areas that by area don't have sewers, you have a lot less dense populations out there. But I would probably say for population wise, we probably have somewhere about 80% of our population hooked to sewers, because they're in areas where denser and the sewers exist there. And so really but if you looked at area wise, we're probably down closer to maybe about 60% of our area is sewered and 40% not.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so I'm concerned with failing septics. We live in the valley, much there is in the valley. If you have failing septics and you can't fix it, and there's no sewer line nearby, residents faced with, how can I fix a failing, septic that now, drainage is intense because of development all around, and the water level's 3 feet. What are you going to do for drainage? It's a problem. I remember I had this experience when I moved to Puyallup over 30 years ago. We lived down the valley and it was on a septic. And I was required by purchase through probably a latecomers agreement or something that I had to tap into the sewer that was out in front of my street. I didn't have an option. I didn't want, hey, I'd like to stay on septic. No, you're going to tap in. So it forced me to, I guess, do the right thing, which is to say, hey, you live in the valley, there's a sewer out front. Someone else has put that in when they did some development down the street, and I needed to tap into that. And so it would have been cheaper for me to tap into that than for me to run a sewer line because my septic was failing. So in some sense, it provided relief for me, but it also, made up for those who had already put the investment down there. And I was able to pay a certain percentage and connect immediately. So I didn't have to wait for years for something like and tap into it within 2 weeks. Now it's ready to go. So there is some value in that. I do like the idea of an investment. I mean, more customers is good. As more customers are sewer customers, they're going to pay into it, which means the current sewer customers of our constituents are not going to have to pay the large proportion of it. If you have a majority of people paying, or a large majority on septic, and that's customers that aren't going to pay into the system, which means proportionally others have to pay a larger load. In terms of the some people might say, well, why should builders, or private sector get some kind of a perk? Well, I can speak from a real estate standpoint, in working with commercial clients versus residential clients. Residential clients will look at a home and purchase it based off of some element of business sector, but at the end of the day is if they can afford it and they want it, it's an emotional decision, they're going to buy it because it's emotionally they want it and it doesn't have to pencil out for them. As long as they can afford the payment, they're going to get it. When you're dealing with a developer, it has to pencil out. It's not emotional. Either this project makes sense based off of the factors of sewer lines and planning and engineering, or it doesn't make sense. And we can see, and I've seen over the course of years, many projects developers have wanted to do in Puyallup, but the single largest thing they said they walk away is it doesn't pencil out based off of the sewer line and running that sewer line. They're not going to do it. And so providing some incentive of paying it forward, say, listen, you provide that line and we'll give you some sort of a credit and that'll come back through latecomers. It'll stimulate other parcels along that way up to that deal to now generate development. And that's what we want. We want to go from, again, suburban development to urban development, high concentrations. So there's less cars, more walkability, more of a sense of community. So this really provides something I think very valuable. I would say I do think we should support some sense of full credit, but many of my colleagues know where I'm going to go with this. The ratio of homeowners versus renters in the city of Puyallup is 48-52%. So we're very close to being almost 50-50. And at some point, if we don't have any kind of city vision as leaders to incentivize homeownership, we could come to there's more renters in Puyallup versus homeownership. And that's when I think our city starts going downhill because there's no skin in the game. So I would say if we're going to do a full credit concept, it should be only for those developers who are providing home ownership, middle housing, whatever you want, that's home ownership. But if they're doing any kind of rentals or apartments, zero credit, not even partial credit. In fact, I would even say charge more credit if you're going to put more rentals in there. Now, I know some would say, oh, it's awfully harsh. But the point is that if we want to incentivize, let's do it right, what we need, which is home ownership, provide a need, and not in more rentals or apartments. Again, we're not anti-apartment, but we want to see that ratio incentivize home ownership where people can build wealth. And I was really struck though, Hans, and it really stood out to me, and it's kind of a concern. I mean, again, if we're in the private sector and we hear what you just said, that our system, in terms of not with no credit, with no sewer credit, and you haven't seen any major sewer connections in the 7+ years you've been here, that's a problem. It's obviously not working. So we need to provide something to stimulate some incentive to encourage development and urban development in a way that's responsible and that might trigger a chain reaction of domino effects. If you have a large parcel and that line is passing by 15 other parcels, all those 15 other landowners now have the opportunity to say, hey, I'm ready to sell, and they're going to get more money for their land when they develop it. So our constituents actually become more profitable because their land is worth more because of the infrastructure that they would pay into and tie into through a latecomers agreement. So I would certainly support that. So I really like it. I mean, as I look down the benefits to the city, I think there's some major benefits we should take a look at and recognize. And I hope that my colleagues here on the council will also find there's some value here and see if we can get something initiated. This would require leadership. And I do know, did you say Pierce County has done this? And have they done this? Have they found some measure of success as a result? Do we know of? Has it been something they've seen some tangible, measurable benefit to that?
Yes, I'm speaking from memory here, but I think they've had 9 separate proposals for this. 3 have been accepted into their credit program.
Wow.
For extending the sewers.
So it was measurably
6 have been accepted. 9 total, 3 were rejected as just not enough benefit for the county.
Yeah. So 2/3, that's a pretty good ratio. When you look back at what we've done some zoning and things or whatever from ADUs. We ask them how is that incentive help? Zero. We haven't seen anything. So again, to do something for the sake of doing it doesn't mean anything unless there's some measurable benefit to the private sector to actually do it. This sounds like precedence, at least in Pierce County, that this program has actually stimulated some development incentives because they've opened this latecomers agreement up. So that's good news. So anyway, I support this based off of quality growth for our constituents, shared cost of sewer fees and infrastructure replacement, and quite frankly, raising our constituents' value of land from people who are maybe waiting to retire, that maybe can't retire because their return on their investment for that particular zoning is not going to pencil out. So now our constituents have a chance to really, in a sense, make some resources off their land as they deserve. They've been holding on for a long time. So it's a shared co-op of, it's not just the developer, everyone sharing in the co-op of this development. Some will pay initially up front and others will pay into it down the road, but it's a shared, and it's really, if you think about it, it's community. We're all working together, private sector, okay, the initial developer, public sector, us, and then constituents who will sign into that to help pay for it. So it's really across the board, everyone's sharing in this advanced infrastructure. Certainly it makes sense to me. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify here, I've actually seen development that this applies to. And I want to clarify just for the previous council member too, exactly what we're doing here. Right now, if I have a sewer line and I have to cross, let's say, go down a road 1/4 of a mile to get to my piece of property that I want to develop and put a housing development on. The city line, though, is 1/4 of a mile away on that road. I pay for that entire line to go out there, and then I hook up and I get a latecomers agreement. Okay. What this does is this allows you to offset a percentage of that cost by a development fee you would otherwise pay on a per unit basis. So you get a credit. And the reason why that is more attractive is because that 1/4 of a mile, if you have to absorb those costs and wait over time to get them back in a latecomers agreement, makes your development pretty much not feasible. Is that correct? Did I just?
Yes, I would say that's a very accurate representation.
So that's what we're doing here. I think this makes sense. And I actually saw development in another section off by Fruitland where the scenario that I just painted to you was one that was actual. That when you looked at the span that that person had to run a sewer line and then absorb all of those costs for the development, it was kind of hard to pencil out. Yet, all of that property along there would now be very viable for development. And what we're saying here is we break that up. We are going to take a risk as a city because we are going to, in fact, assume that latecomers agreement, a percentage thereof, that would go to someone else's benefit, and then they would pay for that which would be just to their specific development. You know, Hans, let me ask you, you said that when the private developers do this, for a variety of reasons, their costs tend to be less. Can you give me percentage? Is that, are we talking about 15, 20% less?
I wish I could. I don't know the exact. This is just in talking with our subcommittee and talking with the developers there. It varies a little bit. It depends on, one of the big factors is prevailing wage versus maybe what the wage in the private sector is. But as the labor market has tightened up, that also has tightened up for there. But I know through me being very familiar with what it costs us with doing all the design, we go through the permitting and things like that. It is very expensive. And what often happens also with our projects is like what's happening out on Fruitland there. We're not just putting a sewer line up. We're also then, well, as long as we're out here and we've had a lot of requests, can we put sidewalks on one side of the road and stuff? So we get a lot of like scope creep that adds and slows down a project and stuff where you're probably not going to see that as much with the development. They're focused on putting that sewer line.
Well, I, for one, would like to see a proposal, a skeleton of a proposal. And by that, I mean, I think Councilmember Johnson mentioned some incentives for a particular type of development that I guess would put more muscle on the bone. But I want to see some round, maybe start with what Pierce County does. They have good experience with this, but it does seem to make a lot of sense to me and would make a lot of sense of development, especially in more remote areas in Puyallup. It just doesn't, I could see how it doesn't pencil out. So I'm okay with this. Other members, please. Just nod your head if. Okay, we have got, I saw a nod down there. I think we have. general consensus to go forward and do good things.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your input.
Oh, wait, Councilmember Dorr, excuse me.
Thank you. So Hans, I'm willing to entertain, as Mayor Castaba has indicated, a skeletal proposal. I'm not sure yet where my support will lie on that. Is there any drawback for our existing ratepayers? Is there anything that they would be, should be, or could be concerned about?
Well, I think the biggest drawback would be if you credit a development and you aren't seeing any future connections with this line. Like, it just seems like, did they choose a location that for whatever reason, we're not seeing any future development, nobody's connecting in, and we're not getting the payback on our investment on there. But as I said before, well, how does that hit the city? Well, if 10% of our costs for doing our capital improvements is coming from the system development charge, then you're potentially losing a portion of that 10% that you've credited with this extension that you're not really getting then a reimbursement on. So that's the risk. And then, since I think that's where we need to be careful where we approve using this credit program. Do we believe is this an area that we want to see in growth from our comp plan? And two, is an area we believe that, yes, it will grow. So I guess I will say, I like to think that we can structure this thing in a way that we have an option to say no to a developer, that there's just not enough incentive for the city to do this kind of incentive for this particular.
So is that determined, will that be determined by the ordinance, or would that be staff discretion?
I would like to leave that at staff discretion myself, because there's so many nuances that are going on here. But I think we can forecast what we decide, how we would make this decision. And it would be based on what is the potential zoning there, how much, as one of the things I had said was, could we make just a cut and dry that if you're 50% or less of this sewer extension is going to benefit other properties, then there's not enough incentive. We're less likely to get our return.
Okay, and so on the labor cost, the comment about cheaper labor concerns me in that we do want our people making livable wages. So I don't see that as the reason to do this. But I am willing to consider the skeleton proposal, take a look at it, and flesh it out a little bit further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitting.
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of frame this discussion a little bit from my perspective. We have three options. The city does the sewer extension, but the question for the city is, which sewer extension do we do? Do we do the one in southeast or the one in northeast, or how do we decide which one needs to be done? And once we've done it, is it going to stimulate the development that we want to see? That's a big question mark. So it's tough for the city to make those kind of decisions. On the other hand, I'd love to have the private sector do all of the sewer improvements and have the city stay out of it, and we don't have to spend any money, and it's all great. But the private sector isn't developing the whole city. We'd have a patchwork of, they might just do small developments. And a lot of the projects just won't pencil out, so that the development will stall and nothing will happen. So that's really not a good option either. So having this approach of a blended approach with a latecomers agreement just makes all the sense in the world to me. Providing some incentives at the front end so that development and putting in the sewer gets put in an area where there's a real need for it, and the private sector is good at telling us where the need is because they're going to develop it. And then so the city bears part of the burden, and the latecomers reimburse. So I'm a strong proponent of this proposal, and hope my colleagues will join me in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to follow up. There's a comment about staff discretion. Could you expand a little bit about how you would see this implementing? Would it be on a case by case staff professional discretion on what might be good candidates for that? Is that kind of what I heard or understood?
Yeah, usually what we do when we're doing something like staff discretion, we use this on like the fee and loop program that the city has had now for a few years, where we see a proposal usually written into the ordinance adopting the program is some guidelines on what we think about. So in this case, it would be looking at if there's enough potential for other connections to be made into the sewer line would be a big factor here. But it also could be that somebody's proposing something that's very different than what our sewer plan lays out of where we want to see the growth. And they're trying to maybe go through private easements or something like that, where we were like, we're not so sure we want a public sewer through this. Now we've got some rules already in place with our construction standards that would prevent that. But you could see a proposal where it's just like, this is not what we envisioned. And we're not going to, incentivize it. If you really want to push it through and do it at your own nickel, that's fine. But and it would be a discussion between myself, our sewer supervisors, and Ken Davies, and then Ken Cook as a development engineering manager to see, does this make sense for us?
Well, I like that approach. I've always believed that city staff, with council direction, with parameters, should be empowered to make decisions, and not have to, be in fear of, oh gosh, if I do this, I'm going to get in trouble. There's some empowerment, right? And so I really like that, and I certainly appreciate that case by case situation, so that it makes sense from a business standpoint, city's business, to make sure that, hey, if we do that, that we believe this is going to pay off. This one probably not going to pay off. It could be a risk, or so why would we want to do that? That makes sense to me. And I think rather than doing a broad, one size fits all, it could really turn into a can of worms. So I like that. I want to go back to this, the private sector possibly doing it cheaper. And there's a speculation that part of it could be prevailing wage, but I'm not quite sure that's the case, because many general contractors hire folks that are union. So I'm not sure that that's the answer. So I want to clarify that. What else do you think could be beyond just the prevailing wage, and just kind of thought that could be cheaper for the private sector versus the public sector? Because I think it'd be good to kind of identify other things besides that.
I could see a lot on the design costs and stuff. We hire, consulting firms to design on that there. But I really do think, a lot of it ties with the scope of the improvements that we'll try to put in as a city by pairing up other things that we desire with that sewer line extension, with the proposal for that. It tends to it starts to bog down the project and stuff, and it adds little costs. They all make little sense, if we're going to be here once and do this and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's a little cheaper for the sewer. So when I compare the latecomers I've seen with the exception of Puget Sound Energy extending the sewer line up on Valley Avenue and then Milwaukee, which was tremendously expensive for a private. Most of them come in cheaper.
I'd like to suggest a possible scenario of why it would be cheaper for the private sector versus a municipality to do it beyond just prevailing wage scenario, because I do believe many general contractors do have union workers that do some of this, maybe not all, but a large amount. I think it's a matter of the private sector, time is money, and they want to get this job done. So they're going to prioritize, get this thing done, get it and get out. Whereas the city, we could relax, do a little here, a little there, and that just kind of adds up with time and energy and money. So I'd like to think that there could be some other factors of just streamline. They have the people already lined up, their contractors are ready to go. So they're maybe more efficient and ready to get this job done, which could save costs because they're just getting in, getting out, and they're getting it paid. So I'd like to just caution that I don't think it's this approach is simply because it's union versus non-union. It's just maybe there's other factors that are more efficient. Whereas the municipality, we have a lot of things that we do. This is all they do. And so their efficiency and cost could be much less. So anyway, support this. Great comments tonight from everybody. And I hope that we can, Mr. Mayor, I hope that we can go from talking about this and actually seeing something before us quickly, even perhaps this year, God forbid, even maybe this summer, that we get some action. Because if we're going to do it, let's do it as much as possible, quick as possible, and let's not drag this out, because again, time is money too. If you got people that want to develop, let's get it initiated, not just talk about it, and then we'll roll it out a year, 2 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you. As they say on Star Trek, make it so. And with that, we're now going to move on to the reports. City manager's report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just a couple items. First of all, This Thursday evening at 6 o'clock, there will be the Pierce County Law Enforcement Memorial Event, which is open to the public. Will be at Bethany Baptist up on South Hill. So if you'd like to attend, that's this Thursday at 6 o'clock. In terms of your next agenda, on May 21st, the two main substantive items at this point will be an interlocal agreement presentation regarding the 167 extension. So that's an interlocal between the city and Washington State Department of Transportation. And then the comprehensive plan update, discussion and presentation will be before you. That was supposed to be this evening, but had to get bumped to the next meeting. And lastly, just one quick note, Mr. Hopkins mentioned Dixie Gatchel, and I would be remiss if I didn't remind all of us of, I remember when she'd come here to the council meetings, would always start her presentations out by saying, to the good citizens of Puyallup. It was always neat. And as you all recall, council dedicated a swinging bench to her out at Van Lura Park. So thank you for that. And that's the extent of my report.
Thank you. With that, Councilmember Adler.
I knew that was going to happen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's like when you were in school and you thought you were prepared and then you weren't, and then you got called on. So thank you. I'll be brief. Appreciate the opportunity to issue very important proclamations earlier tonight. I do just want to highlight that our May is a very popular month to recognize many different things and many different efforts throughout the country. So May is also Affordable Housing Month. May is also Mental Health Awareness Month, which is something that I encourage everyone to continue thinking about and advocating for increased mental health access and treatment. I have been dealing with a family member that has been in crisis for 2 months. And it has been a very long 2 months trying to find a place for him to go. And I don't have to tell anyone in this room that our system is broken. And I hope that folks continue to advocate for mental health treatment and increasing that treatment, and also taking care of your own mentals and not being afraid to seek help, ask for help, and frankly, surrender when you need to get help. And thirdly, it's also May is when we celebrate teachers. And right now it's Teacher Appreciation Week, and today is Teacher Appreciation Day. And I just want to encourage everyone to kind of sit back and think about those teachers that really changed your life or made an impact on you. Because I bet that you had one or two that immediately came to mind. Mine was Jamie Maureen at Puyallup High School, among many others. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have had really great teachers throughout my time in the Puyallup School District, but I was very fortunate to have Jamie Maureen almost every single year of my high school journey at Puyallup High School. My junior year, she was my ASB advisor, my leadership teacher, my English teacher, and then my homeroom advisory teacher. We got to spend a lot of time together. I learned a lot from her, and she really empowered me to go forth in what I always really felt empowered to do, thanks to her. And so I just thank all of our teachers and educators, whether they're in a classroom or not, for helping take care of our youth and encourage them. I know that we have one on this dais right now, but I'll refrain from calling the member out. But, I very much appreciate everyone that gets up every single day to ensure that our youth stay engaged and will be leading us into the future, including the two of you back there, because I'm sure that you have been just enjoying this very riveting evening. but thank you. And we're glad that you're here. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two things. Wanted to remind everybody that last Thursday was National Day of Prayer. And unfortunately, it went unrecognized here in our city and for whatever reason. And I just was kind of wondering, you think about it, sometimes when it comes to faith, we're afraid, we dance on eggshells because we don't want to offend anybody. But when you look at the latest Gallup poll, 81% of the people in America said they believe in God. Now, it doesn't mean that 100% do. And does that 81%, what do they believe? Well, I don't know, but they acknowledge God. And yet when it comes to expressing faith, we act like only 2% believe in God and there's 81% do. And if you believe in God, typically there's an expression called prayer. And it seems to be that people usually are open to that. So we can't be afraid to exercise our freedom of religion, to express our faith, freedom of speech, expression of religion. And the minute we quit dancing around it, I think we'll be a lot better place, because I don't know about you, but I could use prayer once in a while. And I think our city could use prayer, our nation could use prayer, our leaders could use prayer, our schools could use prayer. Every time we come into this room, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and somehow we seem to forget that we say one nation under God. That's pretty straightforward. I don't know what we're afraid of. The currency that we have in our pocket and spend in God we trust. So anyway, just put that out there. I hope that people exercise their freedom of speech and their freedom to express their religion more accurately, because again, we're according to our Gallup poll, majority of people express some faith in God. So this comment will probably irritate a few people, but that's okay, because the majority of people are going to resonate with it, and that's the beauty about it. I have friends who don't believe in God, and guess what? That's their choice. It's okay. You don't have to. It's a personal thing, but we can express it publicly, and we shouldn't be afraid. Lastly, I met a constituent on the streets, walking around in a summer evening last week, and I met her initially, her at the Concerts in the Park series. And anyway, she said that she goes, Councilmember Johnson, I watch the city council meetings, every one, and I watch it from start to end. And so if you can put the camera on me, where is it? Right here. Marla, I want to say hello. God bless you, Marla. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. I just want to thank Chief Engel for having the officers attend tonight. And I appreciate that they took their time to attend. Want to again extend our gratitude and appreciation for all that PPD does. I hear such positive things in the community. And often as council, we tend to hear when people are having some struggles. So it gives me a lot of pride when I hear the positive things about the department. So thank you for that. And it was an honor to attend the Medal of Honor ceremony. I've been to a couple of those, and to just see the families supporting their officers, and you had some great words there. So I just want to echo the gratitude to our PPD. Councilmember Adler had some great comments. I was going to say mental health awareness as well. And on that vein, we remind people that we have 988 now. So if there is a mental health crisis, it's not just a suicide prevention line. You can use 988 to get connected immediately to somebody who can assist you. We have our SIP Puyallup. Maybe I'm probably stealing Councilmember Gilliam's thunder, but then City Manager Kirkley stole mine because you took my comments. So SIP is this weekend, the wine walk on Saturday. We have Meeker Days coming up next month, and I just would like to wish all the mothers here and everywhere happy Mother's Day. Thank you.
Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. Okay, well, obviously, our council members are hitting a lot of great things, so I'll try not to repeat anybody. So I had a really great time with the Puyallup Police Department Awards banquet, watching our officers receive their awards and hearing why they got those awards. So our chief does an excellent job of tracking the growth in protection and I don't even have the proper words, but it was really an honor to be there and to witness our officers receiving their awards. So well done. We also had the kickoff on the same day, the Blue Scarf Society. So that's where women in business are helping other women in business through the Puyallup Summer Chamber of Commerce, and where I got to learn a little bit more about my fellow council member Adler and her background in education or in her own education and how she got to where she is. I'm been honored to get to work with her. So that was really fun. Also, I did want to do a quick shout out for Trudy Bocot's retirement. She served many years with our senior activity center, and whenever you would hug her, you would walk away and you would smell like her for a long time. That's like one of my memories of Trudy. My youth center kiddos back in the day would go and volunteer and teach the elderly how to use smartphones. We would just connect on a weekly basis, and whenever I'd sit down with Trudy, we'd have great conversation. She'd give me a big old hug, and then I remember smelling like her for the rest of the day. Yeah, it was a great smell. Oh my gosh, that is not at all what I meant. I love Trudy, and she had a wonderful perfume, and it stayed on me. There we go. So, I got to witness Councilmember Dorr do a presentation at the downtown Puyallup Rotary on South Sound 911, and that's where I learned for the first time about 988. I had never known about that before. So that was really beautiful. And then I think I'll wrap it up there because I don't want this to go on, but really pleased about all the activity that Main Street is doing for farmers markets, for Maker Days coming up. So we have a very active community. And if for some reason you feel like you're missing out, just kind of step into downtown a little bit, or just check on a neighbor and see what they're up to. And I'm guessing you'll be pulled into something wonderful in Puyallup. So thank you, Mayor Castema.
Thank you for those comments. Councilmember Whitting.
I just wanted to report a little bit about my service on the South Sound Housing Affordability Partners. We're coming up on the end of a year at this point, and on an annual basis, we get to decide whether or not we want to continue to pursue that membership. The membership fees are in my mind pretty reasonable. Our fee for the upcoming year looks like it's going to be a little over $13,000. If we want to withdraw, we have to withdraw by June for the following year. But I think we're getting value from SHAPE. I think it's helping us address some of our affordability issues. I think there's strategies coming out of that. And one of the things that I'd like to highlight is we expanded our multifamily tax exemption geographic area here recently, but we haven't had much activity in that score yet. And as we get projects that use the MFTE, there's requirements that we track that the units are staying affordable, and so there's some administrative overhead required to that we would have to take on as a city. But SHAPE is actually talking about putting together taking on that responsibility and offering it to the member governments to help with that aspect of the MFTE process. So I thought that sounded pretty good. How that might be funded is still up in the air. It's likely to be on an a la carte basis. So if we wanted to take advantage of that, we'd have to pay an additional fee for that. But I wanted to make my colleagues aware of this. And again, I advocate continuing to be a member of SHAPE, and we'll need to be approving some SHAPE stuff in the next month or so. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Councilmember Whitting. I would just like to, in my comments, recognize Renee Muir with the Pretty Up Puyallup organization in Puyallup. She diligently goes out on a Sunday and goes for about 3 hours with a group of volunteers, and they pick up litter in downtown Puyallup. And that may sound like a fairly small thing, but I very much believe that A clean community just kind of sets the stage. The very small things let people know that people care about a community. They let people know that they care enough to take care of these small things. Well, by God, I bet you they care about things as they go up the ladder in size. And so I want to do a shout out to her for that. I want to thank Councilmember Gillian for your comments on saying this is a very active community. This is a very active community. When I was out at a booth for the farmers market, I mentioned this before, well over 100 people commented to me, and all of it very positive about what's going on here in Puyallup. And I think that there's a little bit of a hazard to that, and I want my colleagues to be aware of that, and the community to be aware of that. People tend to think that you see in our community right now, a sense of cohesiveness, a sense of belonging to this community, and downtown being the commons for all of our neighborhoods coming together and meeting at all of these events. And they tend to think that, well, that's just the normal state of things. And they don't realize that it's been years and years of hard work, generations have gone into building these events in Puyallup, and planning these communities, this downtown area. I had a mayor of another city say to me, he said, you have no idea how lucky you are to have a town center. And it's a city that's about twice our size, and they have lots of money and all of that, but they cannot create a downtown center like we have in Puyallup. And that wasn't just built in the short term, that took generations to build. And it's important that we continue to invest in our parks, our roads, our police services, and not take that for granted. And then I'll leave you with this last bit of I think just knowledge that I've come I've absorbed over all these years, and that is it's so much easier to destroy and dismantle something than it is to build. And I think you can see community after community. And I look to the north here. I think I played a role as a young child, and many people do, in building the beautiful city that, once was up in Seattle, the downtown area being a very friendly area. And all of that was built up in generations. If you go down there now, there are areas you don't feel safe. And to rebuild that will take generations. So they were able to just kind of destroy what took generations to build. And we have to be aware of that here in Puyallup. It's much easier to tear things down than to build them up. So I ask of all of our colleagues to constantly improve things. We want to make them better. But boy, we want to be very cautious of all the generations that came before us and all the efforts that have gone in to building this community. And there's a tremendous sense of community in Puyallup. I laugh, people, they laugh at the name Puyallup. They think we're a bunch of farm folks. And I'm up in Seattle and I'm seeing in Bellevue. I don't pay attention to them at all. I think that they would just, they would love to have what we have in this community. So we have a sense of stewardship and a sense of responsible leadership. And with that, we're now going to adjourn. But before we do that, we're going to go into executive session. And the council will now move recess into an executive session to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale and lease, and to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase. The executive session is expected to last 30 minutes, and no further action is expected following that executive session. So there's no reason for audience members to retain here. And then afterwards, there will be an adjournment at that time. But at this point, we're going to recess and go into executive session. I want to thank everyone who's been here this evening.
The city clerk notes the time is now 8:49, and the city council meeting for the Puyallup City Council on Tuesday, May 7th is adjourned.